And outside the box reviews, Giant Monster Monday. We're looking at two figures from the Bandai Creations Godzilla Wave 2. On the left here, we have King Ghidorah, and on the right, we have Godzilla. And both versions of these characters are from their portrayal in Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, one of my favorite films in the Millennium series. Starting off with King Ghidorah, we have a very interesting version of this character. I think the GMK version took some very strange creative liberties. The heads look a little more lion-like, I think, than they have in the past. And the Bandai Creations version really doesn't help things by giving them very large fangs. It almost looks like buck teeth on them. As is standard for the line, the teeth coming back are all connected by one piece of vinyl, but here they're painted. I think the vinyl is a gold color from what I could see, and the teeth are just painted white on top. He has some very electric pink gums. This head over here just has a little splotch coming onto his face as well. But the one thing I do like about the sculpting is that they chose 3 different head poses. This guy has a very open mouth, got a closed mouth on the center head, and a slightly open mouth on the third. All 3 also have some very cool looking red eyes on them, black pupils in the middle. Also looking at the sculpt, you can see the middle head kind of makes up the spine of the character in a weird way. It comes down and flows kind of like you would expect a normal neck of this nature to go, and the other 2 kind of come out of the chest muscles. It's a kind of an odd head positioning for Ghidorah, but the sculpting is pretty nice. There's kind of the smoother underside here. There's the rougher texture up top with the spinal ridge going down the middle. Coming down to the chest, he has some decent looking muscle kind of texture sculpted in there. And then we come down, he's got his big Ghidorah chicken feet. Another aspect of this figure I don't particularly care for are the wings. Being done in vinyl, they did have to be thicker, but they come off a little too big and floppy and cartoony. But there's some good sculpted detail in here with the kind of veins going through it. And then of course all the scales, which look great on this figure. But you look from the side, you can see just how thick those wings actually are. And here in the back, we got his 2 rug beater tails coming out, and they're pretty nice looking as well. For articulation, this figure has a lot more seams than it does articulation. It looks like each head should be able to turn. Nope, that's a glued shut seam. Looks like he has waist articulation. Nope, that's glued shut too. You can swivel at the base of each wing, and then you can swivel at a 45-degree cut at the tail. I actually like this cut in the tail because when it's all the way down, you have a really good position to kind of help the character stand. Since he does have a tendency to topple over, you can move it aside if you're kind of leaning him against the back of a display, and then from the front, it doesn't look too weird, so the tails are just kind of going off to the side and a little more out of the way since he is a very wide figure and a very long figure with all things extended. Then if you really wanted, you could twist it around this way, and everything's kind of out of alignment now, but it does almost look like you could have him in a flying pose, which I like that as well. There are little cuts here too, little glued seams, but if you were able to rotate back here on the tails, it would actually be really nice to be able to achieve that look. This Godzilla I like a lot more. This is one of my favorite Godzilla designs. I love the whited out eyes. I love how evil he looks. And I love that it's a throwback to the original suit design. He stands a lot more upright than he had in a lot of the previous films. He carries his weight closer to his hips, which is something more iconic from the first Godzilla. The head sculpt just looks so sinister on this. I love it. He's got the gray plastic in here with the teeth sculpted and painted in, but the painting's pretty clean. He's got his red tongue in there as well. They picked a nice charcoal gray for this figure. Coming down, we have his 4-clawed hands. He's got some very big folds around the tops of his legs and his 4-toed feet with the shorter kind of thumbnail there. Smooth undersides of the tail. And then one other feature I really like, the bright white spines on this figure. They kind of fan out in a weird pattern. It feels like they should be a little more in, but overall, I really dig the look of it. There's a nice fade between the paint there. Overall, for a very inexpensive figure, I like the way this looks quite a bit. He also has decent articulation for a little vinyl figure. You can swivel at the base of the neck, you can swivel at the shoulder, swivel at the legs, and swivel at the base of the tail. Now, I previously reviewed the Japanese 8-inch theater exclusive kind of version of this, take on this version of Godzilla, and I much prefer this theater exclusive. It is an even more astounding version of this character, and I've already reviewed him, so make sure you take a look at that review if you haven't already. But there is a certain charm to this Godzilla for me. Both of these characters are favorites of mine. King Ghidorah is definitely a favorite villain from the Godzilla series in pretty much any of his incarnations. And as I already mentioned, I love this take on Godzilla. And looking at this, they actually are in scale with each other. I thought for a while that they weren't because I couldn't quite place which version of King Ghidorah this was. But then when I realized it was the GMK version, it's one of the few times that these characters have been at least close to the same size. I think King Ghidoarh is still a little small, but he doesn't need to be the size of, say, that Monster Arts figure that I have. And speaking of which, both of these guys I really do hope get a Monster Arts figure somewhere down the line. This Godzilla in particular is definitely one I have my fingers crossed for, but this take on King Ghidorah wouldn't be bad either. It's the only time the character ever gets portrayed as a hero in a movie, and kind of be nice to give him his due. But both of these figures get recommends. They're nothing particularly strong, but they're cheap figures. They are very inexpensive, and that is the one thing I will defend about the Creations line is you can walk into a toy store and pick them off the shelf. Toys R Us is carrying them, Target was carrying them when the Godzilla movie was in theaters, and heck, even the new line of Godzilla figures in Japan appear to be redos of some of these creation figures. I believe this King Ghidorah is one of them. But just kind of know what you're getting here. The Japanese figures are a much higher quality than these American takes on them. There's no denying it, but for what they are, I think they work. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box Reviews Giant Monster Monday. Stay tuned for more to come.